Now move to the problems in resource development. Actually, in the case of resource development, we face several problems. Mostly the overutilization of the resources, misuse of the resources, overutilization of resources, misuse of resources. So this kind of things create a big problem in the resource development. So that's why it's very necessary to combat these problems. And by these problems, we can say the depletion of resources. You know, because satisfying the greed of the few individual, that means resources use overly used very hugely just for the few individuals, greed to satisfy their over demand. That's why resources depletion started very muchly. And second, we can say accumulation of resources in few hands, not equally distributed, only few hands, and which turn into divided the society into two category, that is uh, category rich and poor, rich and poor. And in the countries, developed country and underdeveloped country or developing country. So this kind of discriminations we can see in the society due to the accumulation of resources into few hands, due to the resource development problems. Next thing, it is a global ecological crisis. It's create a global ecological crisis. Global, such as example, we can say global warming, ozone layer depletions, environmental pollution, land degradation. So this kind of problems we can see, which is related to the ecosystem, which is related to the environment. So due to the overutilization, misuse of the resources, and high concentration of the resources into few hands, this kind of problem creates. Okay, to solve these problems, there is a new programs has been taken, that is sustainable development. Actually, sustainable development, what is the sustainable development? You can say a sustainable development means it's a international programs, international summit, earth summit has been taken in 1992 from 3rd to 14th June in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Actually, it is a United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, United Nations Conference Environment and Development. You know, actually it's a birth anniversary, 22 birth anniversary of uh, birth anniversary of first human environmental conference held in Stockholm in Sweden in 1972. It's a 22nd anniversary. Okay, so in this conference, about 179 countries take participations, and in this sustainable development program taking in a international actions, broad actions, broad international actions on environment and development issues in the second 21st centuries. Okay, that means developmental issues and environmental issues that face in the time. That's why to combat this kind of problem, and the sustainable development program taken in 1992 at Brazil in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Okay, actually in the definition, sustainable development is the um, development that meets the needs of the present. Sustainable development is a development that meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That means development means development and without damaging of environment and without compromising the needs of future generations. So that means development should be the way without damaging environment and without compromising the needs of the future generations. Development means with perception of the environment and with future generation and need, without harming the future generation, without harming the um, environment. So this kind of development is known as sustainable development. You know, it's a brutal definitions of sustainable development during the Rio de Janeiro summit. It's very clear. If in perspective of ecology, in perspective of society, in perspective of economy, there is a development of sustainable development. Sustainable developments focus on ecology, development focus on ecology, focus on economy, focus on society. So to problem the social, economical and environmental to solve the economical, environmental and social problems, a sustainable way taken to development, taken for the development of the ecology, economy and society. So this is known as a sustainable development program. Next, in 2015 in sustainable development programs taken 17 goals, and 169 targets to achieve by 2030. So these 17 goals are, you can see here: no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality of education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, okay, affordable sanitations and affordable and clean energy, decent work and economical growth. Third is the industry innovations and infrastructure. Next one is the reduce inequalities. Then sustainable cities and communities. Okay. Then responsible consumptions and productions. Then climate actions, life below water, life on the land, and then peace and justice, strong institutions, then the partnership for the goals. So these 17 were the sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals. SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and these Sustainable Development Goals taken to achieve by 2030. Okay. So I know it's not the part of your syllabus, but I just add it for the informations. So move to the next part, that is resource planning in India. You know, resource planning actually in India and everywhere, the resources are not distributed equally everywhere. There is some resources which is abundant by the different resources. There is some lackness. For example, we can see here the Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh Madhya Pradesh are rich in minerals and coal but lack in water. If you move to the Arunachal Pradesh, there is abundant water but lack of infrastructure. But lack of infrastructure. If you move to the Gujarat and Rajasthan, there is a potentiality of solar and wind energy but lack of water. So the resource is equally distributed everywhere. Some resources are some resources are abundant and some resources are very low in compared to the others. So resources inequality create a discriminations, create a disbalanced conditions. To remove this disbalanced conditions, to remove this inequality, the resource planning must be need, you know. And resource planning conduct into three way. First is the resource planning is a complex process in which involve, first one is the identifications and inventory of the resources across the region of a country. In this in this phase, it include surveying, mapping, quality and quantity measurement, this kind of things. Second phase is the evolving planning structure into the appropriate technology. That means in this phase, the technological development, skill development, institutional setup for implementing the resource development plans. So in this case, the technological development and skill development must need to implement the resource development plan. And third phase, it includes the match of the resource development plan with the overall national development plans. Now, what is the regional development plan for resource extraction? It should be matched with the national development planning. Okay, and in India, in India, it's taken India taken 5 year planning to implemented. 5 year planning taken to, to implement 5 year planning to solve the inequality of resource development. So 5 year planning is one kind of resource planning in India to by the government and to solve the problem, you know. And that's why the some region rich in resources but economically backward, some region poor in resources but economically developed, and because the technological development and historical experience. Why? When you can see is some region and rich in resources but economically backward. For example, say to you, Jharkhand and Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh are rich in resources but economically backward. Why? The lack of technology, lack of infrastructure, lack of historical experience. And some region are economically lack in resources but economically developed. Why? Because they have technology, they have they have historical experience, they have knowledge, they have infrastructure. For example, Japan, one of the a big scarcity of natural resources, but it's a developed country, economically developed. Why? They use their technology. So that means only huge amount of resources is not sufficient for the development, you know. There needs a proper planning, there is a technological development, there is a skill development programs that help to boost up for the use of resources in a proper way, and it ultimately increase the economical conditions and economical development, you know. And now move to the next topic, that is resource conservation. So resource conservation must be necessary. Actually, why it's necessary? Irrational use of resources, that means overutilizations, misuse of resources, and uneven use leads to socio-economic and environmental problems. That's why the resource conservation is very very important and necessary. It's very vital. That means the irrational use, overutilization, misuse the resources concentrated only few hands, the few greed create the environmental depletions. So this kind of problems are very very vital. To solve this kind of problem, the resource conservation must be necessary for future generation, for environmental protections. And in the resource conservation's Gandhi philosophy, in the case of resource conservation, what was the Gandhi's view and the Gandhi's philosophy? Gandhi said there is enough for everybody needs. That means the resources present in the earth surface, it's enough for everybody needs, to fulfill the everybody needs, but not anybody greeds. It can't satisfy the greed of the human beings. It can satisfy the needs but can't satisfy the greed. A greed is the selfish individuals exploitive nature of technology, root cause of the resource depletions, according to him. What? Selfish individuals, greed, exploitive nature of the technology, that means overutilization of the technology, is the main cause of the resource depletions. No, and that's why. And finally, the Rome of Club first international effort on the resource conservation in 1968. Again, in 1974, the Gandhi philosophy presented by the Skomachar in his book The Small is Very Beautiful. Things small is very beautiful. That means use the resources very small amount, and it's very beautiful. It can satisfy your demands as well as your future generation demands. You know. So in 1974, Gandhi philosophy presented. Then in 1987, a Brundtland report came, and in this, it's also known as Our Common Future, and it's higher focused on sustainable development. And finally, Sustainable Development Program in 19 taken in 1992 at Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, to combat the environmental problems and developmental problems. Okay, so this was the today class, resource conservations. Okay, thank you so much.